11. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Lee. Happy Sabbath. I'm going to continue reading Leviticus. We left off at chapter 10 last time. I've got some DSS manuscripts pulled up here. DSSEnglishBible.com. Got a link below if you want to go check it out. Charles Thompson's Septuagint pulled up. Go to 11. The Brenton Septuagint pulled up, and Leviticus 11 King James Version pulled up, and the Bible Search and Study Tools. Here you can look up the words for everything. And this is KJV, but you can go to different translations. But you can look up all the words here in the Hebrew and the Greek. So that's helpful. And I've got the Targum pulled up. Targum Pseudo Jonathan pulled up here. This is a 9. Let's see. Yep, there's 11 there. All right, so going to get started here. This scroll fragment here is 10 and 11. Some there, 27. Okay, so here's Leviticus 11 from the Masada scroll. Yahuwah spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying to them, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the living things which you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. Whatever parts the hoof and is cloven-footed, and choose the cud among the animals, that you may eat. Nevertheless, you shall not eat of those that chew the cud, or of those who part the hoof. The camel, because he chews the cud, but doesn't have a parted hoof, he is unclean to you. And the cud is like cows eat the grass, and they part the hoof, so cows clean. The coney, because he chews the cud but doesn't have a parted hoof, he is unclean to you. The hare, because she chews the cud but doesn't part the hoof, she is unclean to you. The pig, because he has a split hoof and is cloven-footed but doesn't chew the cud, he is unclean to you. And science backs that up, as pigs have like worms in their meat, and pretty much they eat anything. So they're like the trash cleanup crew, kind of like the catfish in the sea. It eats all the junk, so you don't eat catfish, because you're going to be eating junk when you eat catfish. And that's interesting. There it says the hare, she; the pig, he. Of their meat you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch, they are unclean to you. And you say, well, is that for us now? You look at, I guess, Acts chapter 10. Most people in the church will say, well, Peter had a dream and everything's clean now. See. So you go back here, that's what right here in 14. But Peter said, Not so, my master, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again a second time, What Yahuwah has cleansed thou shalt not call common. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. And when you go further down, well, what was he talking about? Was he talking about animals? Because he had a vision of animals. The vision, yep, all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, fowls of the air. Peter, kill and eat. That's 12 and 13. But you go down here, and you see in Acts 10:28, he said unto them, You know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation, but Yahuwah has showed me that I should not call any man, common or unclean. So you can no longer call the Gentiles unclean, because they can be grafted into the covenant of Israel also. So the vision is animals, but it's people. So people don't understand the parable, so they go in error. And some translations have, thus he declared all foods clean. That would be like, declared all foods. And they probably doctored it, but so NLT, all foods clean. Yeah, see, in the NIV here it says, in saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Did he? You look back here, go back to the very beginning of Mark. The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, or Yahusha. And the people will see teachers of the law, and they'll be like, aha, see, he's against the law. No. And saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is unwashed. So what's the whole problem they got here? They saw them eating with unwashed hands. That's the problem. Nothing to do with food. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. See, tradition. Why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating with their food with defiled hands? See? Isaiah was right prophesying about you hypocrites. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain, teaching merely human rules, traditions of men. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human traditions. So they let go of the law and are holding on to human traditions. You have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. See? Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. What's he talking about? He's talking about unwashed hands. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. And where he said, where's it at? In their stomach, out of their body, thus he declared all foods clean. Now, see, before, this did not have a Greek word to go with it because it's not in the manuscript. It's added. Now they've added these Greek words to make it look like it was in there because people are pointing it out. Hey, these words aren't in there, but now they've got it fixed on the website. But if you go to another translation, an older translation, Mark 7:19, he said, that which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. Let's see, what verse was it? Yep, 7:19. So you go to 7:19 in the King James Version. Not there. Gone. It's not there. They added it. Also, two proofs. Third witness. Isaiah 65 and 66. End days prophecy. You can read this whole thing for yourself. Let's see. See, behold, I created new heavens and a new earth. When does that happen? End days prophecy. Where's that? There we go. Isaiah 65:4, which remain among the graves and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh and broth of abominable things. See, it's still abominable things is in their vessel. You can read the whole passage. A people that provoketh me to anger continually to my face. Still not good. He created it at creation. He hasn't changed the creation. Therefore, it's still the same. See here, he's going to, what happens here, Isaiah 66:15, behold, Yahuwah will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. When does that happen? When the Messiah comes back, the second coming. For by fire, by his sword will Yahuwah plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahuwah shall be many. Yeah, they replaced his name. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination, still an abomination, and the mouse shall be consumed, saith Yahuwah. So, if you want to take that chance, you've got plenty of witnesses right here that tells you that's not a good idea. So, verse 9, these you may eat of all that are in the waters, whatever has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas and in the rivers, that you may eat. All that don't have fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, and of all that move in the waters, and of all that living creatures that are in the waters, they are an abomination to you. And he has to give these back to Israel, because when Israel went into Egypt for 215 years, they forgot. So when they left Egypt and left Egypt's ways, he had to teach them everything all over again. The patriarchs, Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, Noah, Enoch, they knew this. Noah brought 7 pairs of clean animals onto the ark and 2 pairs of unclean animals. And you shall detest them, you shall not eat of their meat, and you shall detest their carcasses. Whatever has no fins nor scales in the waters, that is an abomination to you. These you shall detest among the birds, they shall not be eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle and the vulture and the black vulture. So we're missing 14 here. And the vulture and the kite and all of its kind. Any kind of a raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, and the gull, any kind of hawk, bird of prey. What do they eat? They don't eat the same things that not birds of prey don't eat. So it's a lot to do with their diet. The little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopie, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are an abomination to you. Yet you may eat these of all winged creeping things that go on all fours, which have legs above their feet, with which to hop on the earth. 22. These of them in particular you may eat, the Bruchus locust and its species, and the Altec locust and all its species, and the serpent fighter and all its species, and the grasshopper and all its species. That's weird. Weird names. These are them you shall eat, the caterpillar and his like, the Atticus and his like, the cantharus and his like, and the locust and his like. You notice locust there. What was John the Baptist's diet? Mark 1:6, and John was clothed with camel's hair and with a girdle of skin about his loins, and he did eat locust and wild honey. So John ate clean. And you'll notice in the Dead Sea Scrolls it said that there's a certain way that you have to kill the locusts. You got to dip them in water and then in fire or something. I can't remember exactly what it is. But they had a certain, John the Baptist in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they had a certain way they had to kill the locust before they eat it, which is not in here. 23, but all winged creeping things which have 4 feet are an abomination to you. 24, by these you will become unclean. Whoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until the evening. Whoever carries any part of their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. Every animal which parts the hoof and is not cloven-footed, nor chews the cud, is unclean to you. Everyone who touches them shall be unclean. Whatever goes on its paws, among all animals that go on all fours, they are unclean to you. Whoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until the evening. He who carries their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. They are unclean to you. These are they which are unclean to you among the creeping things that creep up on the earth, the weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. The rat. The mouse. And the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, the chameleon. These are they which are unclean to you among all that creep. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until the evening. On whatever any of them falls when they are dead, it shall be unclean, whether it is any vessel of wood, or clothing, or skin, or sack, whatever vessel it is with which any work is done, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until the evening. Then it will be clean. Every earthen vessel into which any of them falls, all that is in it shall be unclean, and you shall break it. All food which may be eaten, that on which water comes, shall be unclean. And all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean. Everything whereupon part of their carcass falls shall be unclean, whether oven, got to be oxen. 35. Ovens. Yeah, it's ovens. Oh, where their carcass falls, yeah. Whatever their carcass falls on shall be unclean. Ovens or range, pots, it shall be broken in pieces. I'm thinking oxen. They are unclean and shall be unclean to you. Nevertheless, a spring or a cistern in which water is gathered shall be clean, but that which touches their carcass shall be unclean. If part of their carcass falls on any sowing seed which is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed, and part of their carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. If any animal on which you may eat dies, he who touches its carcass shall be unclean until the evening. He who eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. He also who carries its carcass shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. It says down here, this reading matches the Samaritan Pentateuch and is implied by the spacing in the scroll. That is one thing I forgot to put up there. Oops. Let's see. Step. Yep, my bad. Leviticus 11. Pentateuch. Yep, I like to use the Pentateuch a lot for the Torah. Oops. I don't need a group here. No. Close group. Close group. Oh. Alright, here we go. Where's it at? Pentateuch. I don't need a group. Leviticus 11. There we go. And it closed the Septuagint, Brenton, and Thompson. Alright. Alright. Get back in here. Okay, we'll let that load. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, the Samaritan Pentateuch was just recently translated. A lot of it matches more closely the Dead Sea Scrolls readings. And then when you get into the prophets, the Samaritan Pentateuch only has 5 books of Moses. So the Septuagint matches a lot of what's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So number 2, Hebrew wording, though not meaning, is different. Again, matching the Samaritan Pentateuch. You find that a lot in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Not that there's anything wrong with reading a King James Version or any of the other ones, but I want it to be as accurate as possible what I'm reading. 40. That's just my personal preference. Accurate as possible. So we got 40 verses there. And 41 in the Samaritan Pentateuch here. And every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth shall be an abomination, it shall not be eaten. Now that is creeping things besides what was mentioned up here, the locusts and all that. Whatsoever goeth upon the belly, and whatsoever goeth upon all four, or whatsoever hath more feet among all creeping things that creep upon the earth, them you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. So it says all creeping things, and then down here it tells you which ones. So it's obviously not all. You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creepeth, neither shall you make yourselves unclean with them, that you should be defiled thereby. For I am Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall therefore sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. Does that apply to New Testament readers? Okay. Well, here is Peter in the New Testament. But as he which hath called you is holy, so be you holy in all manner of conversation. You look in the Greek, conversation is your deeds, your actions, and also your words. Because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy. He just quoted Leviticus. Right after it told you everything you could eat and what you couldn't eat. Be holy, for I am holy. So he tells you, keep the food laws. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, for I am Yahuwah your Elohim, that bringeth you up out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law of the beast, and of the fowl, and of every living creature that moveth in the waters, of every creature that creepeth upon the earth, to make a difference between the unclean and the clean, and between the beast that may be eaten and the beast that may not be eaten. So you got this manuscript here. If you see it in red, that means that it's in the manuscript, but modern translations or manuscripts is missing. So this is in the scroll, and this is in the Samaritan Pentateuch. And wash himself in water. Wash his clothes and wash himself in water. Whatever goes on its, not Paul's, belly. So you got Leviticus 11. Leviticus 11, 27. 27. Leviticus 11:27. It goes upon Paul's. So, belly. Among all animals that go on all fours, they are unclean to you. So maybe the understanding changed as the centuries went on, and they switched it over to Paul's. There's some reasons for the way they changed some things. Some things were deceptive. Some things were changed so people could understand it better. You got to know what you're looking at. So, Leviticus 12, and Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman have conceived seed and born a man-child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. According to the days of the separation for her infirmity shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. But if she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled, for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest. The priest who shall offer it before Yahuwah, and make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. This is the law for her that hath borne a male or a female. And if she be not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons, the one for the sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean. That's 12. 12 is pretty short and sweet. So, yep, 12 in the Thompson short too. So we got 13 here in the Dead Sea Scrolls, 32, 33, 3, 57. Well, that's a long chapter. So it starts at 3 there. So verse 1 here, and Yahuwah spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest. The priest shall examine the plague in the skin of the body. This is scroll 11Q1. If the hair in the plague has turned white, and the appearance of the plague is deeper than the body's skin, it is the plague of leprosy. So the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot is white in the skin of his body, and its appearance isn't deeper than the skin, and its hair hasn't turned white, then the priest shall isolate the infected person for 7 days. The priest shall examine him on the 7th day. Behold, if in his eyes the plague is arrested, and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days. The priest shall examine him again on the 7th day. Behold, if the plague has faded and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spreads on the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall show himself to the priest again. The priest shall examine him, and behold, if the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought to the priest. Verse 9 to 32. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall see him, and behold, if the rising be white in the skin, and it have turned the hair white, or there be quick raw flesh in the rising, it is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if a leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that hath the plague, from his head even to his foot, wheresoever the priest looketh, then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy have covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white, he is clean. But when raw flesh appeared in him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall see the raw flesh, and pronounce him to be unclean, for the raw flesh is unclean, it is a leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turn again, and be changed into white, he shall come unto the priest, and the priest shall see him, and behold, if the plague be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague, he is clean. The flesh also, in which even in the skin thereof was a boil, and is healed, and in the place of the boil there be a white rising, or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it be showed to the priest. And if when the priest seeth it, behold, it be in the sight lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy broken out of the bull, or boil. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hairs therein, and if it be not lower than the skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stay in his place, and spread not, it is a burning boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if there be any flesh in the skin whereof there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burneth have a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and it be in sight deeper than the skin, it is a leprosy broken out of the burning. Wherefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the other skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days, and the priest shall look upon him the 7th day, and if it be spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. And if the bright spot stay in his place, and spread not in the skin, but it be somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is an inflammation of the burning. If a man or woman have a plague upon the head or the beard, then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it be in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it a yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scall, even a leprosy upon the head or beard. So we're on 31 there. Yep, 31. Yep. And if the priest look on the plague of the skull, and behold, it be in sight not deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague of the skull 7 days. On the 7th day, scroll 4Q23, on the 7th day the priest shall examine the plague, and behold, if the itch hasn't spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the appearance of the itch isn't deeper than the skin, then he shall be shaved, but he shall not shave the itch. Then the priest shall isolate the one who has the itch 7 more days. 33 to 39. Yep. He shall be shaven, but the skull shall he not shave, and the priest shall shut up him that hath the skull 7 days more. And in the 7th day the priest shall look on the skull, and behold, if the skull be not spread in the skin, nor be in sight deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the skull spread much in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall look on him, and behold, if the skull be spread in the skin, the priest shall not seek for yellow hair, he is unclean. But if the skull be in his sight at a stay, and that there is black hair grown up therein, the skull is healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. If a man also or woman have in their skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots, then the priest shall examine them. Behold, if the bright spots on the skin of their body are dull white, it is a harmless rash, it has broken out in the skin, he is clean. If a man's hair has fallen from his head, he is bald, he is clean. 41. And he that hath his hair fallen off from the part of his head toward his face, he is forehead bald, yet he is clean. 42. But if a reddish white plague is in his bald head, or the bald forehead, it is leprosy breaking out in his bald head or his bald forehead. Then the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the swelling of the plague is reddish white in his bald head or in his bald forehead, like the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the body. 43. He is a leprous man, he is unclean, the priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean, his plague is in his head. And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled, he is unclean, he shall dwell alone without the camp, shall his habitation be. The garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it be in the warp or woof of linen or of woolen, the warp or woof of linen, whether in a skin or in anything made of skin. 40, yep, all at 57. 49. And if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin, either in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is a plague of leprosy, and shall be showed unto the priest. Yes. Warp and wolf. Yeah, it's all in Leviticus. Wolf, and the priest shall look upon the plague and shut up that hath the plague 7 days, and he shall look on the plague on the 7th day. If the plague be spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in a skin, or in any work that is made of skin, the plague is a fretting leprosy, it is unclean. He shall therefore burn that garment, whether warp or woof, in woolen or in linen, or in anything of skin, wherein the plague is, for it is a fretting leprosy, it shall be burnt in the fire. And if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. And the priest shall look on the plague after that it is washed, and behold, if the plague have not changed his color, and the plague be not spread, it is unclean. Thou shalt burn it in the fire. It is fret inward, whether it be bare within or without. And if the priest look, and behold, the plague be somewhat dark after the washing of it, then he shall rend it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. And if it appears again in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, it is spreading. You shall burn with fire that in which the plague is, the garment, either the warp, or the woof, or whatever thing of skin it is, which you shall wash. If the plague has departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and it will be clean. This is the law of the plague of mildew in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or the woof, or in anything of skin, to pronounce it clean, or to pronounce it unclean. That's a mouthful. Warp or woof. That is... what's that? The warp, H8359, Shathi, woven material, the warp. Set of threads drawn lengthwise in loom, through which the shuttle bearing the woof is thrown crosswise. So Leviticus 14. Yep, 16. There's not enough space in the scroll for the entire verse. Probably one of the clauses about the ear, hand, or foot is omitted. The scroll has 2 additional letters, Resh and Aleph, here, but the meaning is unknown. Resh and Aleph. So let's go to 22. 14. And Yahuwah, Leviticus 14, and Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall go forth out of the camp, and the priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of leprosy be healed in the leper, then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 birds alive, and clean, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. And as for the living bird, he shall take it, and the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and shall dip them in the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle upon him that is to be cleansed from the leprosy 7 times, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose into the open field. And he that is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. And after that he shall come into the camp, and shall tarry abroad out of his tent 7 days. But it shall be on the 7th day that he shall shave all his hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shall shave off. And he shall wash his clothes, also he shall wash his flesh in water, and he shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 he-lambs without blemish of 1 year, and 1 ewe-lamb of the 1st year without blemish, and 3 tenth deals of fine flour for a meat offering, mingled with oil, and 1 log of oil. And the priest that maketh him clean shall present the man that is to be made clean, and those things before Yahuwah at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall take 1 he-lamb, and offer him for a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them for a wave offering before Yahuwah. And he shall slay the lamb in the place where he shall kill the sin offering. Who's our lamb? Messiah. Our Passover. Passover. Is, where's it at? Paul talks about it. Let's see. Yeah. Our Passover. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 5:7. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that you may be made a new lump, as you are unleavened. For even Messiah, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. He's our lamb. Sin offering and burnt offering in the holy place, for as the sin offering is the priest, so is the trespass offering, it is most holy. And he does the intercession for us now. By so much, Hebrews 7:22, by so much Yahushua made a surety of a better testament. And they truly were many priests, because they were not suffered to continue by reason of death. But this man, because he continueth forever, hath an unchangeable priesthood, Melchizedek. Wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto Yahuwah by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. For such an high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, who needeth not daily as those high priests to offer up sacrifice, first for his own sins, and then for the people's. For this he did once, when he offered up himself. For the law maketh men high priests which have infirmity, but the word of the oath, you read about that in Enoch, which was since the law, and they think that's since the law of Moses. Word of the oath is in Enoch, in the beginning of creation. Maketh the Son, who is consecrated forevermore. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest, who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which Yahuwah pitched, and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of Yahuwah when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed thee in the mount, the things he saw in heaven. But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is a mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises, which means no more blood of bulls and goats. For if that first covenant had been faultless, there should be no place to have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant. The sacrifices were added because of transgression, and I regarded them not, saith Yahuwah. For this the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahuwah, I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and the priest shall put it upon the tip of the right ear of him that is to be cleansed, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of the oil, and pour it into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle of the oil with his fingers 7 times before Yahuwah. And the rest of the oil that is in his hand shall the priest put upon the tip of the right ear of him that is to be cleansed, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot, upon the blood of the trespass offering. And the remnant of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall pour upon the head of him that is to be cleansed, and the priest shall make an atonement for him before Yahuwah. And the priest shall offer the sin offering, and make an atonement for him that is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. And afterward he shall kill the burnt offering, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the meat offering upon the altar before the faces of Yahuwah. And the priest shall make an atonement for him, and he shall be clean on the altar before the faces. 22. And if he be poor and cannot get so much, then he shall take 1 lamb for a trespass offering to be waved, to make an atonement for him, and 1/10 deal of fine flour mingled with oil for a meat offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves. This is scroll 4Q23. 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, and the one shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. On the 8th day he shall bring them for his cleansing to the priest, to the door of the tent of meeting, before Yahuwah. 23, 24. And the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them for a wave offering before Yahuwah. 25. He shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Yahuwah. You'll see the Father's name is YHWH in the scrolls here. Then the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand. That says, not enough space in the scroll for the entire verse. So maybe wasn't there. His right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the trespass offering, the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand, he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahuwah. He shall offer one of the turtle doves, or of the young pigeons, whichever he is able to afford, of the kind he is able to afford, the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. With the meal offering, the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before Yahuwah. This is the law for him in whom is the plague of leprosy, who is not able to afford the sacrifice for his cleansing. Yahuwah spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, When you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for a possession, and I put a spreading mildew in a house in the land of your possession. So 35 is missing. So this scroll here, scroll 4Q26. Then he who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, There seems to me to be some sort of plague in the house. The priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes in to examine the plague of spreading mildew, that all that is in the house not be made unclean. Afterward the priest shall go in to inspect the house. It's 36. Yep, still missing. 37. Yep. And the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the plague be in the walls of the house with the hollow strakes, greenish or reddish, which in sight are lower than the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. 40. And the priest shall come again the 7th day, and shall look, and behold, if the plague be spread in the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take out the stones in which is the plague, and cast them into an unclean place outside of the city. He shall cause the inside of the house to be scraped all over. They shall pour out the mortar that they scraped off outside of the city into an unclean place. They shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house. If the plague comes again and breaks out in the house after he has taken out the stones, and after he has plastered the house, then the priest shall come in and look, and behold, if the plague has spread in the house, it is a destructive mildew in the house. It is unclean. They shall break down the house, its stones and its timber, all the house's mortar. He shall carry them out of the city into an unclean place. Moreover, he who goes into the house while it is shut up shall be unclean until the evening. He who lies down in the house shall wash his clothes, and he who sits in the house shall wash his clothes. If the priest shall come in and examine it, and behold, the plague hasn't spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. To cleanse the house he shall take two birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. They shall kill one of the birds, in an earthen vessel over running water. He shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and with the running water, and with the living bird, with the cedar wood, with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. But he shall let the living bird go out of the city into the open field. So shall he make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for any plague of leprosy and for an itch. A lot of stuff they had to do. 54. Yep. 54. Law for for the leprosy of a garment and of a house, and for a rising, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. Yep. 15, not too long. So we'll go to, let's see, scroll. Got 10. That one starts at 2. So Leviticus 15, and Yahuwah spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his issue he is unclean. When any man has a discharge from his body, because of his discharge he is unclean. This shall be his uncleanness in his discharge, whether his body runs with his discharge, or his body has stopped from his discharge. It is his uncleanness in him all the days of his discharge of his body. Even if his body stops the discharge, it is his uncleanness. The reading matches the Septuagint and the Samaritan Pentateuch. So Leviticus 15:3, this last passage, and the last passage is gone. For every bed whereon he who has the discharge lies shall be unclean, and everything he sits on shall be unclean. Whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. 4 to 10, yep. And whosoever toucheth his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. He that sitteth on anything whereon he sat that hath the issue shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And he that toucheth the flesh of him that hath the issue shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And if he that hath the issue spit upon him that is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And what saddle soever he rideth upon that hath the issue shall be unclean. Now you would think if the day started at dawn, it would say, a lot of people say because this says until even, he's got to be unclean until the day's over. Well, why would it say even if the day starts at dawn? It would say he was unclean. He'll be unclean until the next day if it had anything to do with the day. But it just says until the evening, if that makes any sense. And whosoever touches anything, let's see, 10 here. Whosoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. I scroll 4Q23. He who carries those things shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whoever he who has the discharge touches without having rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. So it's 11 to 18. And the vessel of earth that he toucheth which has the issue shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when he that hath an issue is cleansed of his issue, Then he shall number to himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take to him 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before Yahuwah unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and give them unto the priest. And the priest shall offer them, the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him before Yahuwah for his issue. And if any man's seed or copulation go out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until the even. And every garment and every skin whereon is the seed of copulation shall be washed with water, and be unclean until the even. The women also with whom man shall lie with seed of copulation, they shall both bathe themselves in water, and be unclean until the even. And if a woman have an issue, and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days, and whosoever toucheth her shall be unclean until the even. Yep, I missed it. All right, so this scroll fragment here has 18. Scroll 11Q2, if a man lies with a woman, there is an emission of semen. They shall both bathe themselves in water, and be unclean until the even. If a woman has a discharge, and her discharge in her flesh is blood, she shall be in her impurity 7 days, and whosoever touches her shall be unclean until the even. 20. And this scroll here, 20, everything that she lies on in her impurity shall be unclean. Everything also that she sits on shall be unclean. Whosoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whosoever touches anything that she sits on shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. If it is on the bed, or on anything whereon she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until the evening. If any man lies with her, and her monthly flow is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed whereon he lies shall be unclean. 24. Yeah. Well, Peter says, "Be ye holy, for I am holy." And Paul says, and more or less he's talking about idols, but you still got to be clean. Yeah, so he's talking about idols. 2 Corinthians 6:16, what agreement hath the temple of Yah with idols? We are the temple, for ye are the temple of the living Elohim, and as Yahuwah hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith Yahuwah, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. And I will be a father unto you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, saith Yahuwah Almighty. Something to consider. Leviticus 16. Yep. All right. I think I'm going to stop at 16. So that's pretty good there. All right. Well, I hope that was a blessing and helpful.